Hello, my dear primary 4 students. I'm Mrs. Dua and I'll be with you during our journey to learn Concept 4, Communication and Information Transfer. This will be our last concept in the Living Systems unit. Do you remember our first concept? Exactly. Adaptation and survival. البقاء والتأقلم. The second concept was senses at work. اتكلمنا على الحواس. And the third was light and sight. الرؤية والضوء. And now we get today's concept, communication and information transfer. Communication بمعنى التواصل. Information transfer يعني انتقال المعلومات. In this concept, we will use what we learned about adaptation of animals and their super senses to understand the different ways they use to communicate with each other or with the other living things that live around them. النهارده هنتعلم ازاي living organisms بعد ما بيعملوا adaptation هيقدروا يعملوا تواصل مع مجموعة الحيوانات اللي شبههم أو الحيوانات اللي حواليهم. Let's begin our first task in today's concept, which is about the key vocabulary on page 92. Let's open the book and read together. The concept's key vocabulary are code, echolocation, pitch, satellite, system. تاني code, echolocation, pitch, satellite, and system. I can see that there are words we already know such as system and echolocation. متهيألي سمعنا قبل كده عن الأنظمة وارتداد الصدى بالصوت. I'm sure you all remember this. Do you remember this table from the Discover book? Draw this chart in your notebook. Once you finish, look again at the vocabulary of the concept on page 92. في the first column, we are going to write what we already know about these vocabulary. زي ما قلنا احنا مثلا نعرف الecholocation والsystem. In the second column, write down everything you would like to know or learn. هنا هنبتدي نكتب الحاجات اللي عايزين نتعلمها. And we will go back to the third column by the end of each lesson to write what we have learned about these vocabulary. في آخر اللسن خالص هنرجع تاني للتيبل ده ونكتب اتعلمنا ايه عن الفوكابولري دي. This chart will help you to have your own glossary. Now, I'll give you some time to write your answers and then I'll share with you some of what I wrote. ما تقلقوش، خدوا وقتكم واكتبوا إجاباتكم في الجدول بتاعكم. The first vocabulary I wrote was echolocation. We studied it in the second concept and my definition was sound echoes when it hits a barrier and bounces off to the same place it came from. Echolocation كان معناها صدى الصوت لما بيخبط الصوت في أي object، سواء الأوبجكت ده كان prey، الدولفين مثلا رايح يصطاده. صح، احنا سمعنا الecholocation when we talked about dolphin. كان بيحصل ايه؟ دولفين كان بيطلع sound hit a barrier or the prey then return back to the source of sound اللي هو الدولفين. The vocabulary that I need to learn more about is system. We studied it in the first concept when we talked about how body parts work together like an organized system. System معناها نظام. اتعلمنا عن النظام الهضمي اللي هو digestive system and respiratory system and how do they integrate together, how do they work together. And we also talked about the nervous system. Do you think we can use the word system to describe other things than the body organs? تفتكروا هل ليها معنى تاني؟ Remember that we will return to the third column at the end of our lesson to write down what we have learned. Now, we can start our first activity in the lesson, which is, yes, great. Can you explain? This is where we have the main question that we keep learning about. Then we write a scientific explanation for it in share lessons. أول ما بنبتدي الكونسبت بتاعنا بنبتدي بكان يو explain، وهنا هنسأل سؤال، هنقعد خلال الكونسبت كله نتعلم عنه، وفي آخر لسن خالص لسن شير هنبتدي نجاوب على السؤال بتاعنا. Our question is, how do animals, including humans, use light, sound and other methods to send and receive information؟ ازاي الإنسان والحيوان هيستخدم اللايت والساوند، الضوء والصوت، عشان يبتدي يبعت معلومات وكمان يستقبل المعلومات. While thinking of an answer to this question on page 93, think of ways that animals and humans may communicate using light and sight or any other way you know or read about. Take your time and record any information you have. You can also use what you know from previous concepts. Can you tell me what did you write? For example, I wrote about how Egyptian mongoose communicates with members of its group using specific sounds. Dolphins depend on the click sounds they make to communicate with the members of the group, while humans use speech to talk. إحنا بنستخدم الكلام واللغة بتاعتنا عشان نقدر نتواصل. You know that the word light and communication remind me of advertisements. عارفين كلمة الضوء والتواصل بتفكرني بإيه؟ بالإعلانات. Advertisements we see in streets and how the words are shiny and images are full of light and different colors to attract our attention and deliver the message that this advertisement is about. عارفين الإعلانات اللي بتبقى في الشارع بتبقى مليانة ضوء وصور عشان تلفت انتباهنا ونبتدي نفهم إيه الرسالة اللي الإعلان ده بيوصلها لنا. It's an amazing and creative way, but not as creative as the way we will learn about in the next activity in our lesson. Ask like a scientist. تعالوا نتعلم مع بعض طريقة حلوة جدا 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 للتواصل، أحلى كمان من الادفيرتايزمنتس، من الإعلانات. Firefly light show. Firefly light? What does that mean? Do fireflies light up? This is what we will know from the video that we will watch together now. While watching the video, write down all the observations and questions that help you understand the phenomena. Like, why do you think they light up? How does light help them communicate? Also, consider how fireflies' behavior is related to what we have learned about adaptation and the senses. دلوقتي هنتفرج على فيديو حلو جدا للخنافس المضيئة، وهنعرف ازاي ده هيساعدها على التواصل، وايه علاقة اللي احنا هنشوفه ده بالحاجات اللي احنا اتعلمناها زمان في الادابتيشن والسنسز.
This pulsing light show in the mangroves of Thailand is produced by thousands of fireflies. But this is no ordinary firefly display. This symphony of lights is being conducted by artists Robin Meyer and Andre Gverder.
This is interacting with nature on a whole new level.
These guys have hacked nature to create a beautiful artistic collaboration between humankind and insects.
So how did these artists get thousands of fireflies to dance to their human tune?
The duo set up about 40 LEDs in the forest and programmed them to go on and off at regular intervals. The fireflies responded by flashing back.
Fireflies are actually not flies at all. They're different kinds of winged beetles. And different species flash for different reasons, to warn off predators or to attract a mate. Some species don't flash at all. Robin and Andre have chosen to use a species of fireflies called Pteroptyx mullici, which are among the 1% of fireflies that synchronize their flashes in large groups. They flash naturally at regular intervals, but if they notice another firefly nearby flashing, They'll interrupt their own pattern and start over again.
Every time it resets, the neural cycles of those two individual fireflies will become more closely matched. Within a few cycles, the two individuals will synchronize and begin to flash at exactly the same time.
Eventually, the whole tree begins flashing in unison. This process is called entrainment.
Robin and Andre have basically used the fact that the fireflies can't tell the difference between another firefly flashing and an LED light flashing to basically hijack the synchronization process in the video. These guys have used technology to imitate nature, but then nature turned around and imitated that technology right back.
These are the fireflies that we have seen. Unlike the other types of beetles, which some of us may have seen, they have wings and fly. إيه ده عندهم جناحات وبيطيروا؟ Yes, but this is not the most surprising thing about them. These fireflies are flashy. So can they make flashes of light and light up? The question is, how can they make these flashes? يا ترى هم ازاي بينوروا وبيقدروا يطلعوا ضوء؟ Think of what we have learned about adaptation. They for sure have something in their bodies that make them able to do so. Look at the third line of the text on page 94 and underline with your pen, fireflies produce a chemical reaction inside their bodies that allows them to light up. عرفتوا ازاي هما بينوروا؟ بيحصل chemical reaction في lower part of their bodies. هو ده اللي بيخليهم ينوروا. Can you see the lower part? The lower part here of the firefly's body. This part of its body produces specific reaction. بيعمل تفاعل معين. And this is what makes them able to flash, like we saw. Wow, like a factory of light. Fireflies use these flashes mainly for mating and protection. Mating? يعني إيه mating? Male make a specific pattern of flashes at the period of mating, meaning the male sends a pattern of flashes to the female firefly around it. Then, female make a specific pattern of flashes of her own. The second thing is that the fireflies use a pattern of flashes of light to warn any predator from coming close. بيبتدوا يحذروا أي predator، أي حيوان شرس إن هو يجي ياكلهم. What do you think I mean by the word flashing pattern? يعني إيه flashing pattern? Flashing يعني ضوء. Pattern يعني نظام. Do you remember the meaning of a pattern? A pattern means something that is repeated in a certain manner. حاجة بتتكرر بنظام بطريقة معينة. As we see, the firefly flashes on and off and repeat this pattern regularly. They do not go off for a long time, for example, and they also do not blink on and off very quickly. Instead, they have regular intervals between flashes. That's what we can call a pattern. When does this pattern change? Exactly, when a new group of fireflies join the leading group. تعالوا نشوف ده بيحصل ازاي. If a group of fireflies is moving and noticing another group. أول جروب في الفايرفلايز هيبقى بيتحرك وبيعمل الباترن الخاص بيه. طب when it notices another group of fireflies with a different pattern هيحصل إيه؟ The first group will stop its pattern. Okay? هيوقف الباترن بتاعه. Then they start to repeat the other group pattern. تاني إيه اللي بيحصل؟ أول جروب كان بيعمل الباترن بتاعه. قابل another group that's doing a different pattern. هيحصل إيه؟ The first group stops and starting noticing what is the pattern of the second group. Then they are going to repeat it. هيقلدوهم. طب what happen if they meet a third group? إيه اللي هيحصل؟ The first and the second group they will stop doing their pattern and starting repeating the third group pattern. عشان يعملوا إيه في الآخر؟ They would like to work as a team. عشان كلهم يبقوا عاملين the same pattern and working like a team. And that's why when the group of artists put LED lights in the place where the fireflies are located, they flashes in a similar pattern to match them. the fireflies started to stop flashing to match the flash they saw, as if they had seen another group of fireflies. After analyzing how fireflies use flashes in communication, we can now answer the question we have on page 95. You can go back to the text in any time to help you. After finishing, I'll share with you some of your colleagues' answers. بعد ما حاولتوا تحلوا الأسئلة, let me share some of my students' answers. The first question is, how does the firefly use senses? إزاي fireflies بتستخدم الحواس؟ Noah said that fireflies use their senses to communicate so that they can see the light flashes well. And for sure, they have a super and amazing sense of sight, so they can easily differentiate the flashes of light. The second question is, how have humans used light to communicate? إزاي الهيومنز بيستخدموا الضوء في الكوميونيكيشن في التواصل؟ My students wrote different answers. Some of them wrote about using the light signal in swimming races by referees to start the race. عشان يعملوا علامة لبداية سباق السباحة بيستخدموا الضوء. Other students wrote about the light that ambulance drivers use to let other cars know that they have an urgent case. This also what happens to fire trucks. Also, while driving a car, we warn other cars that we will stop or turn right or left using lights of the car. The third question is, write a question you would like to learn more about related to communication among organisms. عايزاكم انتوا اللي تكتبوا دلوقتي سؤال حابين تعرفوا اجابته عن التواصل في الكائنات الحية. I have prepared a large board in my class for my students to write their questions on it. I found that they had many questions, such as, are fireflies nocturnal animals? يا ترى الفايرفلايز حيوانات ليلية؟ Why is this communication so important to their survival? يا ترى الطريقة بتاعة التواصل بتاعتهم مهمة للبقاء؟ Are there any other animals that communicate using light like fireflies? يا ترى في حيوانات تانية بتستخدم الضوء كمان في التواصل؟ Is the light the only way in which fireflies used to communicate? These all are questions related to communication in living organisms. Even now, we are communicating, and what helped us easily communicate with each other was our ability to read and write. How do you think ancient Egyptians were communicating with each other before the alphabet and writing invention? To answer this question, we will go back in time as we start our third activity, observe like a scientist. هنرجع دلوقتي بالزمن للقدماء المصريين ونشوف ازاي كانوا بيعملوا تواصل. Alphabet and written languages. We will watch a video to help us differentiate between writing system in the past and today's way of communication in humans. Remember that your observation on the video will help you understand about the writing patterns. تعالوا نشوف الفيديو.
Communication is about sharing information, ideas, stories, news, music, recipes, TV commercials. There are a lot of ways to send messages. Even two cans connected by a string will do the job.
Please continue to hold.
But no matter how the message is transmitted, it must be in a language understood by the sender and the recipient. Alphabets made language visual and opened up tremendous possibilities for communication. Excuse me.
I'm busy right now.
The ability to communicate through language and speech rather than through noises or gestures is one of the things that separates humans from other animals. The development of written communication made it possible for humans to share words across distance and time. Words can be recorded and transmitted later. Historians believe several cultures developed writing systems independently at about the same time. Some of the oldest known writing appeared in Egypt around 3000 BC. The ancient Egyptians created hieroglyphics, an elaborate writing system made up of about 700 hieroglyphs or symbols. They wrote their symbols in rows or columns and read from left to right or right to left. Hieroglyphs of animals or humans faced the beginning of a row, so a reader would know where a line started and which direction to read. Common symbols were birds and parts of the human body. The Egyptians referred to hieroglyphs as writing of God's words and used them to decorate the walls of pyramids, temples, and tombs.
Have you written down your observations? I'll share with you the observation that I wrote, and you need to check with me. I observed that hieroglyph differs from our current language. The letters is made up of symbols and drawings instead of the letters we know. Hieroglyph is written in columns and rows. بتتكتب في columns rows. And it can be read from right to left or from left to right. But in Arabic, we write in rows from right to left. Did any of you observe how scientists discovered the direction of reading and from where the line began? تفتكروا هنقرا ازاي من اليمين للشمال ولا من الشمال لليمين؟ غريبة جدا. الساينتست اكتشفوا طريقة يقدروا يحددوا بيها ده. Scientists started to notice the pattern of letters and what is regularly repeated on the walls. They found that there are symbols that are repeated more than others. These symbols were in the form of animals and humans' body parts. They found them in each line, and this means they mark the beginning of the line. الساينتست لما قعدوا يدرسوا الكتابة الهيروغليفية لقوا إن في أشكال بتتكرر، والأشكال دي دايماً بتبقى مرتبطة ب human أو animal parts, body parts. فابتدوا يقرروا إن دي أكيد بداية جملة جديدة. How they know the direction of reading? They began to look at the symbols' direction. If they were pointing to the right, then they should be read from right to left. And if they were pointing to the left, they should be read from left to right. What amazing secrets we discovered right now. Let's move in our observation by reading the text on page 96 and 97. If any of you divided the text and underlined the most important sentences, like the number of symbols or letters and the way they record, I think you might have reached to what I need you to understand, which is the similarities between all writing systems and the pattern they have in common. Despite the difference of each system, all writing systems use a way or a method that the sender and receiver can understand. Also, all writing systems had a common goal: to help every nation in recording their history so we can know about them when time passes. The differences are that ancient writing systems used different symbols like hieroglyph or cuneiforms اللي هي اللغة المسمارية, while today's writing system consists of 28 letters in Arabic, and although alphabets contain fewer letters than hieroglyph, we can compose unlimited words from them. In the past, people used materials from the environment to write on them. Ancient Egyptian, for example, they used papyrus, a kind of paper made from a reed that grows in the marsh near the Nile River. Ancient Mayans created paper from the mulberry tree. Sumerians used clay molds to write on them. Now, we can use paper or advanced writing systems. We have learned so far about communicating using light by fireflies in Ask Like a Scientist activity, and the communication method by early and today's writing system in Observe Like a Scientist activity. These two activities have two similar things that scientists always use in their studies, which is discovering the pattern that different organisms, including humans, use in communication. لو خدتوا بالكم احنا ازاي بنركز على الباترن، النمط المحدد اللي بنستخدمه في التواصل. Now, it's time to evaluate all we have learned about communication to be ready for our next lesson to explore unique communication methods. We will start the fourth activity, evaluate like a scientist. What do you already know about communication and information transfer? Before we start this activity together, I got a group of different pictures. Let's look carefully at them and write your observation. Let me show you the pictures. We will use a strategy called STEM completion to support you while recording your answers. In this strategy, we use the sentences starters to order our ideas. You will choose 3 sentences from the ones on the screen, like I observed, I am curious to know that, and anything else. Let's see how this strategy can be used with the images. I will choose a sentence number 5, and I will write that the similarity between the first and the second image is the use of speech to communicate. بيستخدموا اللغة التكلم للتواصل. Here, the teacher is talking to the students in the class. And in the second picture, the girl is also talking on the phone. I will use the sentence number 4. I'm curious to know how lions use roaring to communicate. Lions must be using the roaring in different ways. For example, their sound pitch may be loud when they are angry or in danger. Now, you have some time to write your answers, and then I will share with you Minna's answer. In sentence number 1, she wrote, I observed that voice is the method used to communicate in the 3 images, regardless the communication means. In sentence number 6, the difference between the first and the second image is that the girl didn't use words to speak. In this picture, the girl here didn't use words to speak, but she used a signal instead. Great, Minna. You noticed that the girl raised her hands, and the teacher understood that she knew the answer and wanted to share it. You must have also observed that all images, although they are different, they show communication in different ways. Now, we are ready to think together about evaluation activity on page 98. Open your book to answer together in this table. We have type of communication in the left column, and we need to classify each type of them. And in the other column, we will write H if human, A, use it in animal, B, if both use it. I prepared here the table for you. عندي هنا في الليفت سايد التايب اوف كوميونيكيشن، وعندي هنا في الرايت سايد انا هبتدي اقرر هل الانيمال بيستخدمها ولا الهيومن بيستخدمها ولا both animal and human. Let's try to solve it. أول type of communication عندي displaying light. يا ترى مين بيستخدم اللايت؟ الانيمالز، humans ولا both of them؟ فاكرين الفايرفلايز؟ Fireflies use light. كمان الامبولانس. And when we drive cars, we use light. So both of us use displaying light. Writing. Who use writing? Do animals use writing? No, of course. Tab humans? Yes. So we write H for humans. What about echolocation? Who uses echolocation? Dolphins, bats, animals يعني. طب do humans use echolocation? No. So we are going to write A for animals. What about high-pitched sound? صوت عالي الحدة. Do animals use high-pitched sound? طبعاً زي اللاين. طب what about us? Yes, in danger situation, we use high-pitched sound. That's why we are going to write B for both. What about cell phone? Who is going to use the cell phone? It's us, humans. What about animals? No, they don't use cell phones, so we are going to write H for humans. And the last thing is e-reader. What is the e-reader? E-reader is electronic book on which we can download different books instead of paper books. This is of course a method that animals use. Animals are going to read books, or humans? Humans, of course. Humans are going to use the e-reader, electronic reader. By this activity, we came to the end. Get ready to review what we have learned today. We learned about the communication pattern of the fireflies through the flashes they use for different purposes like mating and warning predators. We observed the communication pattern in early writing systems and how they developed from simple system to an advanced system of alphabets. We read about the word system. We read about the word system in alphabet and written language. فاكرين the word system؟ كلمة system كانت معناها أنظمة. We read about the word system in alphabet and written language text when we said writing systems. Let's add it to the concept wall and in your glossary. Go back to the table and record the definition you have in your mind about the word system as you learned today. Thank you, fourth grade scientists. I'm sure that you have enjoyed today's Fireflies show. In our next lesson, we will learn about a new show or way for one of the most famous communication systems in marine life. Do you have any idea what does the animal we will talk about use this to communicate? This is what we will know more about in the next lesson. Thank you.